Hello everyone, this is Jimmy Cultist, back again with another exploration game video. Today we're going to be talking about cutscenes, how to trigger them, and how to make them skippable. The triggering process was something requested by a viewer, but it's a very good idea, so I'm gonna go ahead and take our previous cutscene block and move it in here. So, now that it's moved in here, we're going to go ahead and, I guess, create a minor cutscene of sorts. Now, the first thing we're going to need is a node. Well, not a node, but a trigger zone. We will need a node too. We're going to set it to detect labels. We're also going to make it a queue because that's better, usually. And as you can see, this friend here is what we're going to want to be detecting, that sort of label. And a quick heads up, if you're making a cutscene, you want to have your character labeled, at least if you're going to use my methodology. Next thing you're going to want is the node I mentioned previously. And I guess you could set this to sustain. It really doesn't... Oh, maybe play once would be okay. Of course, there's a little go-between we're going to have to put in here. A counter. Now, what does the counter do? Now, you may be like, well, if it plays once, why do we even need a counter? We need a counter because if you trigger the zone twice by accident, it will replay the cutscene twice, which would be extremely rare. However, we don't really want to take any chances. We want this thing to play and not be triggerable again, which the counter is perfect, because the counter will just go on once and then never be triggered again. Next thing you're going to do, you're going to be deleting these two cameras and copying out this timeline and changing it to sustain. Now, why are we doing this? Well, it's because I want to make the cutscene eventually skippable. By the way, a little quick tip about these sort of things. When you're creating a cutscene, if you want to drag the bar, do it from here, extend it from inside of its menu or whatever, because if you do it this way, it'll create this weird cutoff point that you'll see here. And you don't really want that. So just do it this way. That's my advice if you want to extend it. Anyhow, we're gonna put a little, like this is him entering the room, I guess. Then we could get an over-the-shoulder view. We're gonna go ahead and turn this off because I want to record the pig's actions. Alright, good. We still got him set for cutscenes. And as a quick reminder, if you want to get your recording done, don't forget to have Circle hooked up to depossess and turn off forced possession. Only when you're recording a cutscene. Once he's back to normal, you can just, you can just fix that. But we're gonna get him roughly into position of where we want him. I think I'll have him here. And then we'll make him slowly walk. Alright, now that's perfect. Gonna set it to keep changes. And you may be wondering, well, if I move the pig's position, how do I get him to start right back here? You know, what if I decide to change the puppet or something, you know? Well, I don't know, update it. Usually, what happens is you'll just automatically be moved into the room in the right position once this thing starts recording. Unless you set it on travel, you'll just be teleported right into position. There are some downsides to this, but they're relatively minor. Speaking of which, we're going to set this first one to disable controller input and disable imps, but these second ones we're actually going to make, you know, you can actually interact with the controller sensor input, because I want to make it skippable. But we'll just go ahead and stick that in there. We're also going to set it to blend as opposed to the usual cut that we're using. And we're going to put a wiper. And a wiper basically is just a transition or fade. This should be pretty cinematic though. Let's go ahead and give it a little test. And we'll just move the trigger zone to the proper area it would need to be to trigger our little pig friend's entrance. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, I shut off the zone. How careless. Now that's not much of a cutscene, but I'm only doing this for test purposes, so there won't be any dialogue or stuff like that, but this system works the same regardless of whether you decide to include those things. Now there is one other thing we're going to have to do, which is you're going to want to limit your puppet's ability to, you know, move around and such. So just press the power off on this, and we're going to press the power off on all these things too. I'm not going to get rid of the controller sensor just yet. It won't be necessary to turn it off, because if you can't trigger anything with the controls, it doesn't really matter. And we're going to call this Turn Off HUD. Now you may be wondering why I'm calling it that, since we don't really have a HUD, but if you ever decide to make one, you could shut it off with this, and I just think it's good to have all the stuff that should be shut off during a cutscene in one keyframe. And we'll just have a trigger zone, turn it on, and we'll call it HUD off. That's not usually how I like to label it. Generally I like to call it turn off HUD, but in this case we'll just go with something more simple. And don't forget to set it in scene, so no matter where it is, it'll be triggered. And of course, set to tag. But we'll just go ahead and put this in here. HUD off. Oh, don't forget to capitalize everything properly, because I used a capital O, not a lowercase o. Just remember that. Otherwise this thing won't work the way it's supposed to. Now that that's done, we're going to need a microchip. And we're going to go ahead and label this microchip Skip. Just a second. Let me put on X-ray vision so this wall doesn't quite interrupt our progress. Alright, open this up. We're going to need one of those handy-dandy controller sensors. delete these wires. They're not really useful for what we're doing. And we're going to set it to remote controllable, which means you don't have to be possessing it to affect it. You can just press the button inputs. And we're going to be taking out a NOT gate. This may be a little confusing because we're not going to be connecting anything to it. But it'll make more sense later why we did this. Then we're going to want a little text displayer, and we're going to display the option to skip the cutscene. And out of a wish to be complete, I want to tell you how to make a cutscene that requires a continual button press in order to skip. If some people accidentally press the button and they skip it early, and it's not really, you know, a welcome thing. Most people don't like to accidentally skip a cutscene that they didn't intend to skip. Personally, I find myself increasingly hitting the skip button whenever I play modern games, but that's just me. Anyway, that should do well. There's the skip option down there. And now we're going to go to our second bunch of settings. We're going to leave this open though. But basically down here we're going to have a little chummy timer. I guess we could set it to 3.0, which is 3 seconds, I believe. And we can have a little keyframe, which basically will kind of give people an indicator that, you know, they're holding down the button. I guess you could call this hold to skip. Yeah, let's change it real quick. I think we ought to be safe, just in case, and we'll call this hold. I don't really like the look of it. It's kind of big and garish now, but I just want to be careful, you know, so that we cover all of these exits, because some people don't really realize that you have to hold down. Put the timer output in here, make it red so that we kind of remember what it does. Don't necessarily have to change the label or anything. So that's handy. And basically what the timer output does is the more output there is in this timer, the more this keyframe will turn on. So basically that option there will begin to grow. And we're going to go over here, take the circle output from the controller and stick it in there. By the way, in case you want to remember how to scope into a controller sensor output or open its tweak menu, all you gotta do is L1 and square. Alright, now that that's done, we have a secondary thing that we need to trigger, which is this. We're going to set it to play once, and we're going to use the timer finished pulse to set it off. And then we're going to copy out this counter. And it's a good thing that we copied it when it was on. By the way, if you copy a counter while it's on, it will stay on even when you reverse the scene, so just keep that in mind. In this case, we do want that, but if you're ever doing something and you don't want that, don't copy it until you've reset the scene. But anyway, down here we're going to have a switch, of course. And we're going to have a keyframe. Now what does this keyframe do? Basically it shuts off our little skip option once it's been triggered. All you gotta do is press the power there and it should work admirably. Then we're going to take out a little wiper. And you may be wondering, like, what exactly is this for? Well, this is, you know, in games there's a tendency to have the cutscene fade out when you're skipping it, it'll still be playing, but it'll be fading out, and I want to create that effect. It's completely, you know, unnecessary as far as it's sort of a flourish. You could just instantly have it skip and the screen go to black, but I want to be somewhat accurate, shall we say, to how these things work. Now we're going to go ahead and stick this little switch in the reset count of this counter, basically turning it off. And we're going to take, excuse me, let's close that. We're going to take the counter full and stick it in the power of this timeline, which is why we made it a separate timeline. So basically, once this goes off, this will no longer be able to play. We'll effectively be shutting off our cutscene. You know, it's funny, I have this on my list, but I don't actually know what this is supposed to do. It doesn't actually go anywhere. Oh well, superfluous. Anyway, let's take a look at this and see how it all turns out. Maybe it'll come to me later what that was for. Now, of course, we had a little bit of trouble with the camera, but that's only because we don't have forced possession on. And something you could do to mitigate this problem, just set this to cut, one little tiny camera at the end, disable controller sensory input, and just kind of vaguely put it in the position you think that the pig is going to be when the cutscene stops playing. And we're going to go ahead and make him forced possessible again and turn off this. Oops. That should do. By the way, one little tiny gripe. I just don't like how our pig is always appearing in the wall. And another little thing is, we don't need to have this quite so long. I think probably 1 second is a lot more what would be customary. There we go. And that's how you skip a cutscene, and how you set one up and trigger it. Hopefully you found this helpful. We're going to give a quick shout out to our monthly supporters on Ko-fi. There they go. Wonderful people all. And that's all for now. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss another video. If you wish to support our earnest insanity, you can check the links in the description to donate or buy merch. Until next time, goodbye.